So I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 6:35 on September 2nd. Yes. And because of the proclamation, we can't meet in person. So it's virtual via Microsoft Teams. Any public comment will be via the computer. Rita, could you call roll, please?
Oh, there she is.
Hi, Rita.
Yes, I can. Sorry, I ran off to make myself a cup of tea. I'm so sorry, but I'm here. Okay, Commissioner Kayla,
Present.
Commissioner Hall,
He was here. Oh, there he is. Terry, your mic's off, Terry.
Yeah.
Present.
Commissioner Allen,
Present.
Commissioner Muir,
Present.
Commissioner Bottenberg,
Present.
Commissioner Nishioka,
Present.
and Chair Gano.
Here. Thank you. So has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting?
Do we want to do the pledge, Stan?
Oh, I got ahead of myself. Thank you, Tom. Mike, do you have a flag for us?
Yes, sir. 1 second here.
I'm good.
There we are.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So now, did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes?
How about the agenda?
Oh, you know what? I screwed up and I printed last meeting's agenda. But anyway, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I just lost everything. So the agenda's been approved. Now we'll look at minutes. I gotta figure out how to get out of what I'm in. Are there any changes or omissions? I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm not.
You know, I'm just wondering, we did vote to adopt the process where it says develop recommendation. We reviewed the process we were going to use, and then we voted to adopt it. So I think we might want to capture that in the meeting notes. And I'd have to check, but I'm pretty sure it's unanimous.
Of course. We get along well.
And yeah, that's the only thing I see.
Okay, any other changes or omissions? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to accept the agenda with the change.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No, so it passed. Public comment. You guys have to forgive me. I lost all my cameras. All I can see is Tom right now. So
That's what I would call a nightmare, Stan.
no, that's all right, Tom. I just got to figure out how to get it back up.
Are there any public comments, Mike?
The only one
It
that
does
we
not
had, Mike,
appear-
we
Yeah.
had the written one that I asked you to include from David Bowling
Yeah,
from
that will be reflected in the minute.
Congregations for the Homeless. Did everybody get a copy of that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any
Yeah.
other public? I don't think anybody else is online. I screwed up, so I can't see what the heck's going on.
Chair, there's nobody else
No one else
online for
online.
public comment.
Okay, thank you. Under new business, can I get a update from staff?
Sure. So it's really short and brief because I saw you guys just a short while ago. So yesterday we gave a human services update to council. Let me just grab my notes on that. To just really talk to them about the fact that we are working, we're speaking to 12 different providers and really getting some qualitative in-depth research and speaking with them so that we are going to be in an upcoming council meeting. We'll bring that to them, our findings. We talked about how you guys are wrapping up your review and talked about the food ride, the postcard, and then also just mentioned that the King County has just announced their eviction prevention and rent assistance program, and that's to assist households economically impacted by COVID. And so this is for people that are unable to fulfill their rent obligations and are at risk of eviction. And so there's currently 41 million in this fund. And the county estimates 60,000 households will need rental assistance, but this funding is only going to really be able to help 10,000 households. And then also, yesterday we had some good news. The USDA has extended their food program to offer free lunches to all kids. So you don't have to necessarily even qualify for free or reduced lunch. You could just go, turn up, and you can get free food. And that will be through the schools. And then we also talked on another agenda item about Tent City 4. So currently they're at Mary Queen of Peace. And as you may be aware, they've asked for extensions. Mary Queen of Peace have asked for multiple extensions because they have nowhere to go because of COVID. And so Faith United Methodist in Sammamish would like to host them. So we had a talk yesterday about that, and Quote Council had some questions on that. So Mike and I, even though we've been working with like all the parties involved, and obviously there are other questions like permitting that's out of our realm, but so we talked to the process and what's happening with relation to that. So the hope is that they'll be out of Mary Queen of Peace by the end of the month. And hopefully at Faith United Methodists. But then there's a whole load of processing and permitting and things that they need to do for that. And that's it.
Okay. I have to log off and log back on. I lost all my camera connections. So Tom, can you take over for a few?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck.
I'll be back.
Rita, I did have a question, and I don't know if this is relevant for this group or I don't want to distract, but the whole notion of CARES funding and opportunities for municipalities, and does that have any role or impact on things like human services availability, and I know it's an unfolding thing, and just how should we be thinking about CARES? We haven't spent much time on that at all, and maybe we don't need to. But how do you think about the CARES funding opportunity?
So I'm going to punt that off to my my distinguished colleague, Mike, who knows a lot more about that than I do.
Yeah,
Cool.
thanks, Rita. Yeah, you all might have heard that the city received, I think it was in the range of 1.9, a little over 1.9 million in CARES Act funding from the state as pass through from the federal government, as the city didn't receive any direct distribution from the government, so the state gave out funding to cities. And right now, the city council is looking at some options for how to utilize that grant funding. They just closed a small business grant program and approved distribution of about $420,000 to small businesses at their meeting last night. And then part of the reason they asked Rita and I to go in and reach out to those 12 nonprofits that Rita mentioned earlier in the meeting was because there's a desire, I think, to give some of that CARES Act money to nonprofits that are experiencing needs resulting from COVID-19 and serving our community right now. So when we bring that information back, either next week or on the 15th about the nonprofits, our expectation is that the council will hold a discussion on funding for nonprofits and likely allocate some money for that purpose. At their meeting on the 15th, I think there's going to be a broader discussion about, the overall plan for the use of this CARES Act funding, as it hasn't quite been completely laid out yet. So I think a more formal strategy will be discussed on the 15th, but
And then
there
Mike,
has been some initial funding recommendations so far.
and not to go too deep into this, but is it possible that some of the CARES funding could actually go into the biennial grant bucket, or is it here and now and it can't be put forward into the next 2-year period, or is that still uncertain at this point?
Gotcha. Yes. So the CARES Act money is intended for kind of more immediate need.
Got it.
So the timeline to spend that is from March 1st through October 31st. So our biennial program isn't affected by the CARES Act funding.
Okay, thank you.
That's March 1st to October 31st of this year.
Correct.
Will the council seek input from us as to how that CARES Act money should be spent?
I know the council likes to engage the commission whenever possible. I haven't heard specifically whether or not they will be requesting the commission's input on nonprofit funding.
Do we
I would-
still
I would
just
think
have the
that-
9 of us here?
Okay, Joyce?
I'm asking if there's still just the 9 of us here?
On the call?
Yeah. Are we?
Yes.
What about what we're reading in all the blog things about CARES money going to Eastside Fire and Rescue to be passed through the city, but I don't understand the process.
Yeah, so I understand there's some confusion about that. That's part of what they're planning to discuss on September 15th, is my understanding, is the plan for how that CARES Act funding goes out and kind of the rationale for it.
Okay, since I brought it up, I would just say, obviously, the commission stands ready to help in any way, and it sounds like it's very formative at this point. Welcome Stan back. And turn
I'm
these
back. Yay. Hi, Judy. Do we want to run through the PowerPoint first?
Yeah, the idea was,
Yeah. Before we do that, I just wanted to say, I think at the 15th, at the risk of being pushy, we should do whatever we can to encourage the council to get our input on that CARES money.
The last CARES go around, they invited me to a meeting. I attended the meeting. The emergency services were there. Mike, were you there?
I'm unsure which
The
meeting that was.
mayor, were the mayor and the city manager. I think you were there, and basically they said, here's where we're spending the money. What do you think? And I just covered the needs that we knew that the city had at the time, which was housing, food, and mental health.
Chair, I believe
And
you were, so
it
that
was
was
kind-
sorry, I think there's a little bit of a lag. I think
That's
that
okay.
was the first round of COVID-19 funding that went out to the nonprofits. So that was to the
That's-
2 food banks, Eastside Friends of Seniors, and I think there's another organization, St. Vincent de Paul. Yes.
Well, half of that was unspent grant money from the last biennium, and the other half was city money, right? Which would be the CARES Act, that 44,000 or whatever.
The city
Right.
matched the COVID money that we had.
And that city money was really the unspent funds of the grants that we had recommended 2 years prior, right?
Yes, that was my understanding, and I didn't attend as the chair. I attended as a member of this group, and the fact that they just wanted to know what problems we had observed in the
So it
city
wasn't
at the
really
time.
new city money. It was already allocated to human services.
Yes. That was my understanding. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, so I think you have it right. Half of it was unspent human services grant money that was carried over from 19 to 20. The other half was new money, essentially the CARES Act funding.
So we've only spent 20 something.
And then there was the second kind of small allocation that council approved, I believe in July, mid-July, which was additional funding for the 2 food banks, and then more funding for St. Vincent de Paul, which I believe was 40,000, I want to say.
Yeah, they didn't ask for our input on that one at all.
Is that
Did
the
they
right way to do
contact-
business?
I'm sorry?
I'm just wondering why the Human Services Commission is not more involved in human services.
Well,
Agree. I agree with Terry and with Joyce. I think if they're going to be allocating money to these human services organizations that we are also funding, then the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. I mean, I'm all for funding the organizations that we fund and give them more money, but we should know what that is and we should be consulted, because we're also making decisions to give them more money, and that would be relevant information for us.
Very definitely.
I think that I agree with Terry and Joyce that we should either show up or send a letter and say, hey, like, we're a whole city and we're all working toward the same goal of making sure that human services are, serving our community. And so we want to know and should be giving input, and also want to know as it relates to our process here, because it could affect our decisions.
well, and I would hope that they would seek our input on it, but we all have to remember we do serve at their pleasure. But it would make sense. It would make sense for them to contact us as the Human Services Commission. Rita and Mike know what the needs are in the area, so they tend to serve as, the staff representative for us on input to the council. Hopefully, if nothing else, I'll listen to them.
So Rita and Mike, what do you guys suggest in terms of aligning our work with the council in this area? How do we do that?
These are all really good points. I mean, the one thing I will say, Jody, is that Commissioner Nishioka, is that this money, I understand what you're saying about getting a bigger context, but this is money that would have to be spent by October the 31st. And then as far as timeline goes as to when we present to council, and again, we haven't even put an agenda together. I know they wanted to have information to try and find out what the gaps were with different providers. But As to what this looks like going forward, I don't know. Mike might be able to shed some light on it. Mike, is there a sense that we're just going to present them the information and they make recommendations? What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for the funding recommendation on that Rita's been talking about as far as reaching out to individual providers to see what their immediate need is, that's generally, I think, imagined to be a staff recommendation. As far as trying to convey the message that the commission would like to be engaged on future rounds of funding or on those types of decisions, you know, there's you could potentially do a letter to the council, or you know, work it into the 1920 grant recommendation or something like that, just as a side note to mention that you are interested in providing input on those decisions.
I mean, I think, like, for example, I'm just thinking ahead for our grant recommendations, we trimmed so much that we didn't want to trim. And a lot of these organizations are organizations that they want to give money to. They've already given extra money to, and they might want to give extra money. So that delta of what we had to trim, if they give it early, and then we give our grant for the next session, that's going to make it up for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there may,
Get it
may,
and, you know, use this money for something else now and save general operating money that they have something that can make up for the deficit that we had to cut out of our budget. And organizations that we funded in the past that they're interested in funding. So that's really relevant information, I don't know, for them as well as for us.
well, this round of funding could kind of bridge that cut that we had to put into place.
Exactly. So I don't know. Should we send? When are we going to present this?
15th.
Oh, so
This one's on the 15th.
Same day.
Okay. So we can talk about it then.
Yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't, as staff, be able to like, you know, as soon as we've written up, like, you know, share that with the commission, and you know, as soon as we've done that. But again, like, you know, this is just, I think it's timing. It's like everything is happening in one go, and so yeah.
One last thing on this CARES Act. The House bill for the next round is called the HEROES Act, and then the Senate. The House has a version and the Senate has a version they're currently debating. The House version has $375 billion for local governments in their bill, which would be the one filtered down for us to get money to the state, and $500 billion to the state. So the state government. The Senate bill, which is the Republican bill, has no money for fiscal assistance to state and local governments. So just FYI, that the House, which is a Democrat bill, has money built in for state and local governments, and the Senate bill does not. And so if you're doing any kind of advocacy work and you want more money for us, for our city, this is where we would want to do advocacy work on it.
Okay. So we're going to be presenting on the 15th. Mike, are we going to get an invitation to appear via their software? I know this question came up a little bit earlier prior to the meeting. They use GoToMeeting, correct?
Right. The city council uses GoToMeeting. So I'll figure that out on the back end and send out information on how to join the meeting.
And all 7 of us could be there, right?
It was initially planned to be a presentation from the chair and vice chair.
We can't be even participating or watching?
Oh, so just by way of background, in 2018, it was Tom and Larry as the chair and vice chair who conveyed the recommendation, and a number of our commissioners, or maybe the entire commission, was sitting in the audience in support.
Oh, yeah. Right.
We were.
Yeah.
Which was great to see. I think this year it's a little bit tricky because it's on GoToMeeting. If we have the full commission on the GoToMeeting, we'd have to notice it as a commission meeting because there'd be a quorum. However, if all the commission is looking to do is watch the meeting, there are a number of options to do that. Of course, in any case, Tom and Stan would be on the go-to meeting because they need to actually present to the council.
Kind of nice if we could see faces too. We did the last time by being in the audience. Can't we be in the
Right.
audience? Can we have a commission meeting that night?
So the live stream of the council meeting, you should be able to see faces on that. I don't think you need to be on the go-to meeting in order to see the webcams.
So it's
The key
definitely not
is-
going to be just on whatever the city Comcast can do, that we in the South End don't have a Comcast.
So we stream the
Wow.
council meetings on YouTube now. So no matter what, you don't have to be on have a cable TV provider. You can just watch it on any computer or smartphone. It's on YouTube.
Okay, as long as you tell us how to do it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I would just encourage that if Stan and Tom at the presentation, if as many as possible can at least tune in so
Oh, yeah.
that Stan and Tom can at least mention that they understand that all of the commission members are watching and are there and are supporting, there to support Tom and Stan in their presentation.
I appreciate that, Terry. We'll bring it up, right, Tom?
Yep.
Okay. So let's go over the grant recommendations and discuss the handoff to the city council. Earlier, you guys had to sync up. You discussed doing the PowerPoint first.
Yeah,
Is that my
so
understanding?
what I would suggest is that we go through the PowerPoint. It was sent out around 4 o'clock, so if you haven't memorized it yet as a commission, that's okay. But the proposal is we step through the PowerPoint. Some pages will be just check marks. We picked up some from 2 years ago. Others we've refined quite a lot. Proposal is to go through the PowerPoint, and that's where we'll tighten our argument and refine it if it's needed, and then go to the letter. And that's the primary work of tonight's meeting.
Yeah, the written letter, in my opinion, is what they're going to have to really in their hand to look at. I mean, the presentation will be great, but once they have that letter in their hand, that's what they're really going to base decisions on.
And they
Is that static? Is that static mine or is that somebody else's?
it started coming in as you were talking, but I don't know if it's from you or not. And then just if I can confirm, Mike, they will get both the letter and the PowerPoint presentation in their packet, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So can I just make to try and start to go down this path, can I just make a proposal? We should start working through the presentation. I think Mike is prepared to bring it up and we can just flip through it.
Sounds good.
And so what we'll do is we'll capture any comments. Tonight is not about agreeing on every word. I can think of no worse penalty and challenge in life than to try and get 9 people to agree on a paragraph or a PowerPoint presentation or whatever. But we really do want the input, and we want to to make this as tight as possible, knowing there will be objections to our recommendation, knowing that we are asking for $114,000 more dollars in a very tight fiscal period of time. So we got to be ready, and we can't BS ourselves that there will not be objections against this. So what we're trying to do is set the stage. And as a commission, it would be helpful to get your guys' input around, should we go deeper on this? Is this adequately stated? That kind of thing. So that's the goal of tonight, knowing that you may not agree with every word. That's okay. We'll go away and tweak and refine. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Page 1. Hopefully we're good on that. Page 2. What's not to like about smiling kids? Can we go to the agenda, Mike?
We should be on the agenda. It might be, my internet connection might be a little bit slow.
just came up. So obviously what we're there to do that evening is present to the council and request their approval. We're going to be quickly summarizing the needs assessment, knowing that not all of them have really spent much time, some have. We're going to go through the grant review process so they can understand the discernment and discipline we had, and then we'll make the recommendations. My perspective on presentations is to be brief, be bright, be gone, and then over prepare for any questions. So we won't shortchange it, but we also won't belabor the comments. And then we'll ask for, approval of the recommendation. I'm not sure when they'll vote on that, but I'm certain, just like 2 years ago, they'll have a series of questions for us. So that is the agenda and topic page right there.
Next.
Next. It's a good-looking group there. You might want to rethink your chair and vice chair, but
Yeah, really.
anyway, it's good for them to see who we are. And the next page is actually even more powerful, to be honest. And Terry, we may want to ask you to look in and give us a couple of blurbs. I don't know if you're adequately represented in this next one. I know there's a carryover from when Larry was here, so we'll pull that out. But what we did last time was simply say, you as a council have pulled this group together, and we think you've done a good job. We have a very broad range of experiences and exposures, and we only highlighted a couple key things. We won't go down each one of them, but we will say that we're pleased with the breadth of knowledge that have been brought to the discernment on the grants. And they will have scanned this hopefully beforehand. We really will just leave it up there for a couple seconds and move on. But Terry, if we can get
Tom,
with you.
Yeah, Tom, I can just give you my input now. What
Okay.
I think you should do is just simply indicate that I'm a past board chair of Friends of Youth.
Okay. That's powerful stuff right there. And let's bold that, Mike. And then we'll just swap that out for the exec director, like Washington School Foundation, which was Larry.
Tom,
Is there any?
I have a question.
Yes.
A lot of these things are things that we were previously, like for me, there's a bunch of stuff that I was on previously. And it sounds to me for other folks as well. So I'm just wondering, do we want to indicate when it's a past thing? Or are you just listing all of our the depth of our experience, whether it's present or past?
The idea was depth of experience, because it really is just scan it and know that we've got a very, very big footprint. But I will say, if something's not on here that you think is important for the council to know, if any of us have gotten involved in something more, let's put that in there. Joyce, maybe we might say, senior center kickoff, startup, or whatever. Founder. Love that. So here's what I will do. Can I leave it at, if you want to tweak, add, or refine anything that's relative to you, send it to Mike, and we'll work it in.
No problem.
Okay. Cool. So now we won't belabor this, but we will quickly highlight that there is there's a needs assessment done. We at the time pulled out a couple key points, including changing demographics, significant foreign-born population, the senior population's increasing, children are front and center, obviously, for many in our community. Housing affordability is an issue. We may want to have a touch more backup points on that, because we're going to come back to that later, but that's worth pointing out. And then also the city does primarily rely on providers, grantees for human services. Those are the key things. Does anybody have any questions, queries, or concerns about this particular page? This was a pickup with some tweaks from the last time we did this.
I'm wondering why we're using the graphic on the seniors. I think that it's a great graph, but are we trying to highlight seniors more than anything else? Because that's what it feels like to me.
I wondered about that this morning when I looked at this, or this afternoon, and I don't know, I had the same question. I don't think it's needed right now, particularly since I added the 12.5% of residents are 60 plus, which is actually a bigger number than the 8% 65 plus. So it wouldn't break my heart to lose that. This is a carryover from last time. And I can't honestly remember why we thought it was so important to put a graph in there. But I'd be okay losing that. It would open the slide up a little bit, give it a little more air.
I think you should do that. I think it's
Yeah,
confusing to have, the graph felt like should be something that captures everything, and it only captures one of the points. It was a little
Right. I agree with that.
And I agree with Jody.
Cool. Yeah, and we will
You can
refine
put a
the
photo
layout.
as well.
What's that?
You could put a photo, or you could just spread the words out so there's more room.
Yeah.
So, Tom, I had the same feeling when I was reading the letter, like I don't know if we are planning to discuss the letter later, but like we ended with some statistics about substance abuse and suicide, and I felt as though if we provide statistics, they should be about all the key areas or not, So in the letter too, I had a very similar feeling.
I agree with that as well. The letter, what we were thinking, Yushina, is go through the PowerPoint because this will help focus us
Okay.
and flush out these kinds of things. But I agree, that last blurb at the end was a carryover. You can see a lot was added for COVID and the reality of today. And the only reason I left it in there was for discussion like this. It is nice to remind them our kids are under pressure, but that's not the only thing we're about. So let's hold that and think about that when we get to that letter. But I agree with that point.
Okay, great.
Cool. Anything else on this, flags or comments? Cool. So the whole idea is the idea is to get some head nodding in the council, so you lean into and warm up in terms of, yep, we're all on the same page. The next is, again, several have seen this, so we won't belabor it. Several have not. They've probably seen the needs assessment. They've heard about it. We certainly referenced it when we did the mental wellness, youth mental wellness. But what we'll do is re-ground ourselves in this. What is the needs assessment? We did one. It really, as you'd imagine, summarizes the needs of the community. It identifies resources currently available. And really the big thing why you do it is to identify service gaps. And we'll have background to explain. They always ask a question or two. Who'd you talk to? Why'd you talk to them, etc. And Rita is priceless in terms of, knowledge in that area too. But we'll be ready if those questions come up. But to give you a quick snapshot, the next, 2 pages are just a quick synthesis around the key facts around each one. Domestic violence, almost 30% of women, every woman 3 out of 10 will experience domestic violence in their lifetimes. There's no reason to think Sammamish is any different. That's the reality, what the expert would tell us. Basic needs. And we would go through each of these. I won't do it now, but those are the statistics that seem to have the most pop to them. Do any jump out as, unusual, or you like it or you don't like it in terms of the statistics we have under this page?
I love the visual. I love the way it's presented.
Yeah.
Really easy to get.
Agree. Completely agree with that. It just reads really easily. It draws you in.
Yep.
I'm wondering on seniors. We do reference seniors.
Do we address the statistics here that we didn't have before, or what?
These are a pickup from
Go
the
ahead.
last go round, so these are not new. The needs assessment was done like 2 or 3 years ago, I guess.
Yeah, but we've got new numbers on the seniors.
Well, we have new numbers in terms of the percent seniors that we reference. But I guess what we were trying to do on the residents over age 65, 75 was the idea that you really do want to invest in your seniors and you want to create a safe place for them, because guess what? Get ready. Most seniors have some type of disability. That was the idea on that one.
Do we put something on the other 2 priority areas?
On the
This
next
shows 3.
page. That's the next page.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay, thank you.
cultural inclusion, it seemed like the most compelling was almost 30% speak a language other than English at home. And mental wellness, and this takes my breath away, I just can't believe it every time I read it, but it is true. 1 out of 5 Sammamish teens have truly considered suicide in the last year. No reason to think that's getting any better, obviously, with COVID. So the idea is we can go as deep as anybody wants to in each of these need areas, but they came to the forefront because these are the focus areas for the city of Sammamish. And this is the grounding point for the grant assessment and discernment work.
So I have a question about going back to the previous slide. I think the grants that we make need to, as you said, are grounded in this. I don't think in the seniors that we have a lot of money going to disabled seniors in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So I worry that that's not the right quote or the right stat. I think a stat that was the 12.5% of residents are over 60 years old might be a better one, because unless we were giving a lot of money or a large percentage of money relative to others to disabled seniors, I don't think that's the right stat. Then it's like we have this needs assessment, but we're not following it.
I agree with that. It sticks out a little bit for me, 2 years removed. The other thing, so maybe we could think about it a little bit more deeply. Joyce, I don't know if you have any input or anyone, but the other thing is seniors feel increasingly isolated. And what we're doing is we're trying to fund things that will pull them together in a connective way. And I wonder if there's some statistics on that as well.
Yeah, I think that would be better.
Okay, I like that. Anything else on these 2 slides? Cool. If, as you read this, the next day or two, you're like, I wonder about that, please just send a note. So that is just meant to tee up their, the needs assessment and why we focus on this. We will have read and reread the needs assessment for about the 90th time, but we will have that top of mind should anyone have specific questions. Now we're going into the grant review process. I'll quickly review with them what we did. And the key here is for them to take away, there was a lot of money requested. We had a hard job, but we also had great diligence, and we discerned deeply and we challenged each other along the way to get to our recommendation. So the challenge, the need is great, and the reality is we cannot fund everything. I think anyone would know that going in. This year we had 66 programs applied for funding, almost $800,000, which is 34%, a third higher, more than a third over the last cycle. In the expected draft budget, there is $325,000. That reconciles to just 41% of the grant request. And worth noting, that number is the exact same number as was funded 2 years ago. So what's in the working budget is exactly what was 2 years ago. And you'll hear from us, there's a lot that has changed, but just know that is what's in the draft budget. So our mindset as we did our work was prioritize. How do you figure this out? What are the most important? And of course, rely on the needs assessment for guidance. Any comments or questions on that one? Okay.
I guess I do have one. You're going to mention in your verbal that the 41% was the same percentage as previous 2 years ago?
The 325 was the same dollar. The 41% is, the 325 was the same dollar amount. The 41% is
This year's percentage.
yeah. Yes.
So I think that might be kind of interesting for you to have as a talking point. What percentage of grant requests we funded the last time with 325? Because was it 60% or 75%? Because then if it was, we'd be like, we kind of want to keep up.
That's good.
I don't know. Potentially that might be an argument that you want to do. I don't know what the numbers are, so I'm not sure if that'll play out.
Last time or whatever, last biennial, we were able to cover X percent with that 325.
And this year it's 41, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Something like that. As a bullet point. I also think it's powerful, and I don't know, maybe it's another bullet point. The 325 is just a carryover from 2 years ago. You know, from being honest, that's not very inspired budgeting because we know things have gotten tougher out there. So just know, and it's not unexpected because that's the way a lot of budgets are built, but the 325 is exactly what was done 2 years ago, and a lot has changed.
So, Tom, in the last grant cycle, did you share any comparisons with other cities nearby with their human services funding?
We did, and we will get to that in a little
Okay.
while. There's some tension around that I want to talk about because I personally will make them and say I think it's good to do that.
Can I comment?
Yes.
We did get pushback from council members because of the comparisons and the fact that we don't have a set tax base for human services like Bellevue and Redmond. So the comparison issue was, there was pushback. And
Okay.
if we approach it, we have to be careful.
I would add that we have new council members who might not have that information though, and it might be interesting for them.
Well, if they ask, we'll have it, but I don't know if we should address it up front.
They're not going to ask. I don't know. Go ahead.
Do we know how much the overall city budget increased? Was it 1%, 5%?
Mike, do you have that?
I don't have that information offhand, and they're still working to refine the budget, so the numbers are in flux regardless. But yeah, I don't have those percentages right now.
Do we know if it's
All I'm saying is that if the overall city budget increased, but they didn't increase us, that might be useful information for us to have.
Yeah.
Well,
I like that.
can I give an input now? The last time we submitted our request, which was not the 325, it was a lower figure. And we said, here's what we want to fund, but here's what you had previously budgeted. And they approved the additional funding. And that is our intent this time to say, okay, we based it on the 325 number, but here is what we truly feel that we need. And hopefully,
Okay, got it.
So to
hopefully
add to
they'll
that,
see that.
to
Go
add
ahead,
to
Nishina.
the point, Stan, like you can say that, you know, if the budget did increase and the human services budget did not increase, but on the other hand, we are facing COVID and there's a dire need. So, you know, so you can make a case by, you know, consolidating different talking points together and by drawing on these different data sources. I mean, I do think it's a good idea to look at the overall increase and then make a case for, you know, in these times of dire need, like when we need more funding, despite the overall increase, we haven't seen an increase in the human services budget.
I appreciate that. Tom, is there a slide later on that addresses that issue?
Yeah, we try to touch on that. That'll come up, but this is good to just put this out there and we can even retumble. The other thing to add in, and I think I referenced this later on, is, and Reed, I don't know if you have this top of mind, but here's what's interesting is we did the 325, we got the 325, and then we all know we went through that youth mental wellness recommendation process where we were able to get $150,000 incremental. So somewhere I feel like it's worth saying in 2020, the amount committed to the community was actually 325 plus 150. Now, maybe not all of the 325 was spent, but I think it's worth reminding them that we've been operating at a higher level investment in the community than that 325. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It does. I haven't had an opportunity to view all the slides. Do we have a summary slide at the end saying, here's what we are asking and here's why? And
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So maybe we plug something like that in there, or at that part we do the presentation to give it a little extra boost on
Yeah.
here's what we'd really like to have and here's behind it.
Why don't we see if we can blow through the next couple slides, because that goes to what the process we did was. And I don't think there'll be a lot of discussion on that. And what I'm sensing is the group wants to dig into the rationale of why we need the money in comparison. So let me see if we can get to those slides very quickly.
Mike?
1 second, Tom. The point that you just made about combining last year's giving allocation was the amount we gave it through the grants plus the youth mental health. I think it might be nice to show it on a bar graph that you had total amount of giving is, 100 and something of the teen mental health plus what we had allocated, and show it. You can show it in a bar graph where it's, orange part is the teen mental health, but it's one bar, and then compare that to this year's funding, which is budget is 325, which will be something less, so that it shows that they're actually going down in funding on a visual.
Okay.
I think that slide should be later, not here. This is showing how our review process came up and where our challenge came up.
Yep. Well, why don't we we'll capture that. I like that. We want to make the
I do
point.
too. I like that idea, Mr. Chairman.
So let's just keep calling these out, and then what we'll do is we'll get together with Mike and Rita and retumble this thing and kind of send it back out and see if we've captured it. That's the primary reason for tonight's meeting. So I love this input. So going to the next one, next couple, this is for them. They will have read it hopefully, but basically you guys have seen this before, you've lived it, but submitted applications, check for completeness, commission review, discussion, debate, vote, recommendation to council. That is the process. Go ahead on to the next one, Mike. We used a score sheet that I'll have a couple key points, or Stan, whoever's presenting this part of it. It says, we really went deep, and the focus was what does MAMISH need? How do they deliver? Are they accessible? What service units are we getting out of it, et cetera. And all we're trying to do here is give them confidence that we're asking the right questions and we had discipline. So I won't go through much time on this, but I like the imagery of showing the scorecard and stuff like that.
I like it. It looks good.
Yeah.
Cool. And how we went about it, which worked very well the last two review process, is commissioners were assigned to one of three subgroups to go deep on priority needs. They were assessed independently, and then that subgroup came back and provided to the full commission their preliminary findings. The commission then discerned on the entire body of work and frankly challenged the subgroup around where they netted out. And in some cases, certainly recommendations were refined, but that was the beginning of the discernment process. So continue. Not surprisingly, the subgroups came back. Their mindset was looking for merit of grants. And one wouldn't be surprised to know that they came back higher than the original budget. The group deliberated to get us to budget, but along the way we realized budget is not actually delivering what need is in the community. So the commission has determined the level of funding that core budget does not adequately address the true needs in the community. We recommend additional funding, and we're going to be going through that next.
All right. So this section's where we should put that graph with the extra 150K.
That might make sense.
Somewhere in this section, because we've already told them that we're going to ask for more money.
We might even move this slide before the summary of the grant review approach, thinking about this. But this slide, the idea here is, and I made some tweaks on it from last time, but why are human service grants important? First of all, the mindset when we go into this is trying to prevent a crisis versus reactive. It's much more expensive to react to a problem situation than to be there at a point of interception early on. So the idea is, what can we do to be in the community and help people resolve problems early on rather than wait for disaster? We've got police, fire, et cetera, showing up on site. Sammamish does rely on providers for virtually all of our human services. Now that is, and Reed, I'm not sure where to put this point in, but that is not different from most of the surrounding communities. Just so everyone knows, there's a mindset among some in the city council that somehow we are not a direct service provider, but other communities are. And there's only two exceptions to that: one, Mercer Island program, and one, a youth program in Redmond. But the key is that we rely on all human service services from providers. As we know, our community is growing and increasingly diverse. The needs are made clear, and the truth is the situation in our community is becoming more dire, heightening our need for grant support by the city. And of course, our goal is to be good stewards of the city. The little line there in italics is the first where we start to talk about things are getting worse, not better. So let me pause there and say reactions to this slide.
Second line, do we need virtually in there?
Probably not, because it's true. I think, no, we rely on providing all human services. Agree with that?
I think it'd have a larger impact versus virtually.
And just like that, it's gone. Yeah, I agree.
The power of Mike. I agree, we should probably move this up versus having it here.
Almost in front of the previous slide.
I would agree.
And maybe even further.
We'll look at it. But do you guys agree we should probably put this up before the recommendation slide?
Silence is agreement.
Okay.
And then moving along. So again, if you know, take a look at this. If tomorrow you take a look at it and you're wondering about this word, that word, just send us a note. What I then wanted to do was go deeper, and I'm wondering even if these next two get pulled forward. But what I did was, Stan, you weren't here, but what we did last time is I pulled together a kind of situation overview in terms of what's happening in our community now. And I thought it was important to share that to set the stage, so this isn't just business as usual. So under the next two slides, I have key themes and considerations. And we need data and talking points, particularly as backup for all of these. But basic needs in the community is clearly accelerating, right? Food, housing, utilities. What I'm calling ancillary strains, less visible, are equally debilitating. You can see them there. We talked about this last time as a lead into our grant discernment. The actual size of need is evolving as new users, what I'm calling new users, I'm open to any changes on word there, emerge. Basic needs, what's happening? Eviction moratoriums are ending, and it's a little unclear if it's ending this month or the end of the year or next month, but the fact is eviction moratoriums are going to end, and there's going to be a big cliff that people may fall off, so they're going to need help, because the eviction moratorium doesn't say you don't have to pay your rent. It says we can't kick you out, but at the end of the day, you do need to negotiate and pay your rent. Moratoriums are ending. Unemployment's at historic levels and will remain stubbornly high, most people would say. And the government stimulus support, notwithstanding the latest round that may come up, that too will wind down. And then finally, from an ancillary standpoint, experts indicate, the strain is increasing: mental wellness, domestic violence, child abuse, very much so, with everyone staying at home. So then the next slide, and then we'll ask for comments on these two together. The next slide is, what do we know? The overall needs increase.
There we go.
The situation is getting more difficult for those with little cushion. Jody, your comments were stayed with me, and I went and tried to get some information. We'll want to tighten this a little bit, but the average household, now this isn't Sammamish specific, this is in general across, I think, Washington State, but the average household in March only had $9,000 in the bank, basically. 30% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. People are right on the edge. The timing is getting dangerous and concerning. The COVID crisis has been going on for 7 months. And the signs are now showing up. You're hearing more and more about layoffs, et cetera. Sammamish housing costs are high as a percent of budget. And that means the downside is more severe when things get tough. And that the emphasis on the commission for us were those grants that we could do double duty, that overlap in a couple areas. For instance, mental wellness and cultural inclusion can sometimes work together. So that's what we know right now, presenting to the council. The status of the city of Sammamish, and this is where it could get a little bit unsettled and might have to refine this. We're glad that we got the recent grant in support, youth mental wellness, COVID emergency, et cetera. Total 2000 funding is blank, fill that in. The programs funded have had success, so let's show some proof of success. Having said that, Sammamish does continue to pace behind neighboring towns. We're gonna have to talk about if we want to include that. I'm open to talking about it, but I don't want to shy away from the truth. That's our job here on the commission. All outlying towns have similar indirect service providers. In context, the human service budget is a small percent of the city budget, and participating as a good community citizen is important. So I've just said a lot, and I'm trying to lay this out. Comments, thoughts, questions?
Rita, can we get a couple of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, is that average household figure, is that for Sammamish or is that a statewide or nationwide figure?
I Googled it. I'm pretty sure it's nationwide. It's average. So yeah. It makes sense that Sammamish is higher, but even if you triple it, it's not that much.
Not at my house. Rita, is there any way to get a couple of feel-good stories from service providers to be able to show success?
Absolutely. And I think maybe a really good start is, and I can quickly collate this, like that the money that you gave impacted this many people last year, like yes. Actual residents, actual lives, and sort of like an actual number. So yes, and we can absolutely get feel good stories as well. Yes.
Cool.
Okay. If nothing else, if we can show them a bang for their buck, maybe they'll increase the bucks.
Great.
Can we change a word in here on the Sammamish housing cost high? Underneath it says downside more severe when things get tight. What are the things? Life, economy, what? Not things.
Yeah, when life settles in, but we could tweak that. It's a little bit of a lingo, too casual there. How would you describe that? The idea is, if I lose my job and now we have dual income couple and significant other loses their job, we don't have much to pad before the housing cost starts seeming even bigger as a percent. So when the economics get tough, things get tough in a hurry.
And health has not helped this year.
The what?
The health, the isolation issues.
Right.
Yeah, mental health especially. Yeah, it's affected my father-in-law too. The isolation issue.
Oh, yes.
Let's try to figure out a way to tweak that later, Tom. I agree with Joyce. I
have a couple of general overall comments on this stuff.
Please.
I think at the very top, if you look at all of the way you're framing this, lots of it has to do with our current situation with COVID, the impact of COVID. I saw in the title, you might want to put in where we are now, something about, where COVID is affecting our communities, the devastating impact of COVID on Sammamish residents or something like that, or on our community. because you kind of don't mention COVID
Yeah.
throughout a lot of this, but really a lot of it is framed. And I guess I want to check in with you, Tom. Are you saying that all of these, what we know now and the slide before, are just the way things were, whether or not we have COVID, that things are getting worse? Or are you saying, or all these points, our current situation is we are in the middle of a pandemic and it is.
Well, so
I-
great point. Stan, go ahead.
I think we should do something like, needs have increased because of COVID, but find a way to say, the needs are still there that we had to address since the last grant cycle, and they are increasing because of COVID or something. We'll find some wording for that.
Yep.
Because I don't want them to think, okay, COVID's no longer an issue, so we don't have to do the funding.
Right.
Agree.
I want to prevent that.
Some language around, we have this sort of baseline need that has not changed, and actually it's gotten a lot worse given COVID. So anyway, I would just say something about COVID and also highlight that these needs are already there and it's just getting much worse.
I like that. It's almost a two-stage kind of thing. Go ahead.
I don't know if you did this because you just wanted to get all your data points in that you had on your written stuff, but I think you need to spread it out. It's way too much words.
Yeah, it's a lot of words.
The what is known,
it's way too small.
what is known should be one slide, and then status of Sammamish Human Service funding should be one slide maybe. And I'm looking at, let's see, the previous slide. Each of the previous, there are
Mike, can you go back?
I love what your verbal explanation of all your points on the first slide is excellent, but I don't think it captures it in the way that you've framed it or written it out. So I think it needs a little more work in the wording, but I do like the way that you explain it verbally, Tom. So I think that'll fine.
And that's on the first page where it says starts with basic needs in the community.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the one that's up right now.
So I think instead of saying basic needs is in community clearly accelerated, I think you need to maybe say it in a more big sentence, like a title heading that says something like the need, basic. I mean, it's what you said, but I don't know. There's something about the way you've worded it that's a little too shorthand for people to get if they're not in human services.
On the slide here.
On the slide, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we could almost say that basic needs in the community still exist and are accelerating with our current pandemic.
Yeah, because what I was saying was I agree. It's almost a two-stage thing where I didn't want to, and I talk about COVID more in the letter, which we can get to, but I didn't want to set myself up for someone who might say, "Oh, come on, COVID, it's going to go away." Let's be honest.
Right.
Well, and that's why I would say basic needs in the community still exist and are accelerating with the pandemic, and are accelerating with COVID.
Yep. Good.
But
Good.
let them know that the needs still exist and they're getting larger.
Yep. Okay.
And the needs are going up with the increased population in Sammamish too.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments?
Mike, 2 more slides, please.
So, and then I do want to note that what we need to do is figure out how do we frame up commenting on the City of Sammamish Human Service funding. And Stan, maybe you and I can kick it around. I mean, my style is to just not step away from the fact that the city doesn't per capita give as much as others, but I also know there's a sense that that's not an apt comparison. I personally don't agree with that, but I also don't want to use it in a way that's a buzzsaw you're walking into, because then that's not productive either.
I want to avoid pushback. I do like the idea. This would be a good place to say, we did add, do the graph here
Hmm.
saying here was the baseline was here. You did the additional, what was it, 150K last year toward youth mental health.
Yep.
However, that's going to be gone, and we recommend that we go with, what happened to my screen? Oh, I know. I turned my video off. Rita sent me a
I
note.
think there's something in the lower left to turn it back on.
No, go ahead.
What about building on what Terry said around the percentage of budget? So maybe not, if we don't need to focus necessarily on the increase of the overall budget, although I think that's a great talking point. But what about the data point of the human services portion of the overall budget in Sammamish is X percent, and the human services portion of the budget in Redmond is X percent, and the human services budget of the, I don't know what the numbers are, but if our percentage of the budget is 10% and everybody else is more than 30%, that would be somewhat persuasive. That would be another way to shame them without using the per capita.
Do we have that even for last biennial, Rita?
Yes,
You caught her with
the
the mouthful of tea.
I know, it's right. I believe we have the per capita, but I don't know if we have it of the percentage of the overall budget. I'll have to look into that.
And also, we'd have to use last budget round because we don't know what this budget round is because the city's still debating on their budget goals right now.
Right.
I still hesitate because it was existing council members that were still here who had the pushback on comparison. They don't like being compared to other cities because we are our own. So
I know it's uncomfortable. The truth hurts.
Well, I'm good not doing that if they support a recommendation. If they say no, we're going to stay with budget, then I will have wished that I pushed them harder, to be honest, because we're not supporting as much as we should or could.
Yeah.
And we're growing. We're on a path, and as long as we stay on that path, I'm good. If we choose to stop, I'm not good, and I will have wished we pulled that every pointed argument. So,
well, and I agree, but I think it would have more impact with a graph right here saying,
okay.
The 325, they gave us the extra 150 last year for youth mental health. Needs have increased. So here's what, we don't want another 150, we want this. And it's a 2-year goal, not a 1-year shot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, well, we can reflect on that, but
I'd love to hear what the other commissioners think about this in terms of showing comparison data, whether it's percentage of budget or per capita data as compared to other cities, knowing that they do push back. Of course, they don't like to be compared. No one does. But is that relevant information for them to have?
Yes, it is. I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
What about Terry and CJ? What do you guys think?
I agree that the county, that the council will push back, but I think it's part of our mission to push back to the pushback.
Yeah, I agree.
Well said.
That we need to, our part of our mission is to urge the council to funding for human services. Now, I think that can be done respectfully.
Yeah.
Council has a very, very difficult position because they're getting pushback from a lot of different factors.
A lot of pushing going on.
And so, but I do think that we need to push on the council to increase funding.
Agreed.
I think you make a good point, Terry, about saying it respectfully. I honestly think, Stan and Tom, that you could say, like, I know this is really hard to see, and we're not trying to make anyone feel bad, but we just think it's really relevant information for everyone to know. It's part of the whole package of information, and it's our job as a commission to educate you all and to provide you with the information that you need to make a well-informed decision. So it's not about, you can make it so that it's like, without saying it, it's not about shaming you. It's about giving you all the information so you can make a well-informed decision. I think you can say something like that respectfully, because I think if I was a commissioner, I wouldn't take it personally. I mean, it's just like, we're a young city. There's lots of reasons why, but this is really good to know. I mean, I would want to know.
And my suggestion would be to not just talk about it verbally. If you actually showed the data, if there was a slide on it, it's much more visual, like it really, people pay attention. So actually having the data on a slide would be a better approach rather than just verbally talking about it. That may seem more like shaming. If you actually had the data, like that's what you're saying is much more evidence-based.
I agree.
Well, and I appreciate it. The majority said, let's do it. So let's find a way to plug it in, Tom.
I mean, it'll be relevant if they push back a lot. I mean, if for some reason they agree with the additional funding, then you don't even have to go there.
Well, they're not going to make a decision that night on our funding anyway.
Yeah, and for that reason, I want to leave them with the most compelling argument. And, it's funny, we need to probably, we need to recruit probably 2 council members. 2 are almost always leaning our way in human services. So we're trying to reach out and figure out what would be compelling and appropriate for 2 of them. And I just want to make sure we have the most powerful argument in front. And I agree to the point, you don't have to do it in a shameful way, but I just feel like it's relevant to talk about how we do relative to the broad community. So,
That's
okay,
fine.
cool.
That's fine. We got consensus. So I do think that extra graph here would be impactful, though.
Cool. Okay.
Does everybody agree on that?
Yeah.
Because they actually, put 475 in.
So we're hunting for 115,000 bucks here. Okay, so recommendation. This kind of leads to it. It shows how it's broken out by group visually. And that then leads to our summary. So in summary, we worked very hard to get to the anticipated budget. We recommend an additional amount for the grant program. We believe the additional funding will help ensure resources are available to address the true realities of residents in Sammamish, like driving a real and noticeable impact, and we'll move the city toward that prevention versus crisis reactive mindset. So we recommend the commission approve the full program. That's our summary.
I think I have no problem with wording that under additional funding to just flat out said, we need to meet the needs of the citizens of our city, or of Sammamish, and without this, we're going to fail.
Okay, how would you, would that be under the additional funding, Will, some blurb like that?
Yeah, something a little stronger
Yeah.
as a lead in. Maybe tweak this first lead in a little bit, just saying, we got to have it.
Yeah.
Does everybody agree with that kind of thing? I mean, it's reality based. We had a lot that we cut out that are truly needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And once we had to weigh them, it was rough trying to weigh and figure out where to cut. I didn't attend last week's meeting, but Nashina and I cut the heck out of ours as far as we could, and then tried to find a little more.
Yeah, it was rough.
I'm feeling like something's missing here. I mean, I know the next slide shows what the funding allocation is, but we're asking them to up by $100 and something thousand, a third of the budget, but we're not really giving them a sense of what they're actually funding. I mean, we're just talking numbers. I kind of feel like aren't they going to have questions about, well, where is this money going? What are we buying for our money? I feel like none of that is in here. Are they going to get that somewhere else? The next slide does have, the donut chart that shows, we're asking you for 41% of basic needs, 34. Not that we want to get into the weeds of the every grant and how much and why we chose it, but I feel like there needs to be a little more about, this feels somewhat sanitized when we're just talking numbers. Oh, we just want 440,000. It's like, well, why?
I agree, and I think part of it that would be impact is the fact that 95,000 of it is going toward the hire for our mental health. I mean, that's the person they intended to hire last year and didn't have the funding for. Now they've got it lined up to get the extra mental health provider, which is $95K for the next 2 years.
I mean, I wonder if we could do something like aggregate some of the outcomes. Like,
Yep, I was just thinking that.
By funding this, we're going to be touching, X amount of lives, X amount of seniors are going to have housing and get food delivered. X amount of youth are going to get mental health counseling that they need. X amount of families are going to be safe. I don't know. There's some kind of substantive thing that we're selling them a product in a way, and we're not even describing what that product is. We're just talking about how much it's going to cost.
And were there any, I mean, it might be helpful to look across the proposals that came in, like just at that summary slide to just pick a few examples where not having this additional funding would really compromise the services that organization will be able to provide. Because we really, we had to bite our tongue to really cut many of the grants. And so it might be worth pulling out some of those examples where really not having this funding can really substantially reduce the quality of the services.
Mm-hmm.
So to play that back, I've been thinking a similar thing, which is, what am I getting for my money? What specific deliverables am I going to be sitting here with by spending this money? And even that is two parts. The most important part is actually by funding the incremental 115,000, how much more am I giving to the city of Sammamish? So I feel like we got to pull out the deliverables, the tactics, whatever, because I agree, it's just a number right now. It doesn't have any emotion to it, and it doesn't really tell me what I'm specifically giving the citizens of the community.
So what I would do is pull out the second bullet, move up the additional funding, show them what they're getting for the money, and then we recommend an increase of the 115.
Well, I think before the summary slide, you have this funding allocation thing, and then add another slide before the summary that says some of that more substantive, descriptive of what they're getting. And then one slide is, this is what you're getting. You're getting, X amount of youth are going to be served, blah, blah, blah. And then do a side that Nishina said, this is what you'd be missing. This is what we're losing if we don't do it. And see if we can describe it really compelling. Like, if you don't fund this, this whole program may be compromised or something like that. It's a program that we've invested in for so many years, and maybe we could describe one of the programs or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just, it doesn't have to be every single program.
Yeah, exactly.
Pull out a couple of things. As an example, if we don't fund this 115,000, as an example, X program will likely not happen. Yeah. And that's something we've invested over the last 3 years. It's done this great work. I don't know, whatever it is. I know that's a lot more work, but I think it'll be more compelling that way.
Yeah.
I think the youth mental health is a big part of this increase. And it was a big issue last year, and they wanted to fund 2, but they even said they wanted to fund $500,000, but they didn't have it. Remember that?
Yeah.
Did you see that? Now we can give it to them with this, plus be able to improve blah, blah, blah. So we do that before we mention before we come to a summary, put it where we put the 115,000 the first time.
Cool.
Mike, can we see the slide that is this the first place we mentioned 115 or was it previous?
We mentioned it in the very start, I think.
Let's see.
We did it here.
Slide 11. No. Slide 20.
I think it's 16.
No, 16
Go to
is,
16, Mike.
16 is blank.
Mm.
20. I think slide 20 has it.
Yeah, I think it's 20.
There. What's that one? 20?
Mhm.
Okay. Do we want to, before we go here, do we want to put it before this recommendation, or how do we want to organize it? Do you want us to try to work on it and just do it?
I think so. I mean, to be honest, we could probably use a little help on pulling this together. I'm not sure what role Mike and Rita will play. I love the energy and I love the input. It'd be nice if folks could help us start to refine some of these slides as well. Because I like the sentiment, and I very much agree. We gotta show them what they're getting for their money, and then we gotta make it hurt a little bit if they say no, I can't, I won't fund it incremental.
Mhm.
You know what might be helpful is if we can look at, I don't know if we have time tonight or you want to do this offline, but if we can look at the chart of what's the incremental that we added, then we can kind of look at that and see what grants are included and how
And
people.
so I referenced that in the note, in the letter, I tried to pull that out where basically the big pops there are additional for youth, seniors, domestic violence, and homelessness. But those are the, go ahead.
So in those buckets, Tom, if there are 1 or 2 examples that you can talk through, if it's possible to really describe those, like how cutting funding can really adversely affect the services in 1 or 2 cases.
Yeah.
That would be much more impactful because Jody is absolutely right. They are just hearing a lot of numbers. They are seeing a lot of numbers and there's no emotional, or that human appeal to, the recommendation, because we are not telling them what we'll be losing out on if we are not providing this additional funding.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Well, like the senior center has, reduced isolation and depression amongst our seniors because they have a sense of being able to participate in something with, their fellow citizens. To me, that's an impact.
From a timing standpoint, Mike, when does this have to ship to council?
Ideally, it would be finished on, let's see, this coming Tuesday, the 8th.
Okay, so a little time to do this.
Can everybody look at it and get back with us by Friday? If you have any corrections or changes you want to make. And then Tom, you and I can work on it with Mike and Rita and refine some of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to speak out loud. I just will tell you, I've personally put a ton of time into this, and I love the energy and the insight, but I could also use some of the skills and the ability to tell the story here. And I'm just wondering if someone can, now or after the meeting, take a crack at tightening some of these slides and bring some of that that impact forward, some of that emotion forward. Certainly we can, but I also sense there's a lot of really nice expertise here, so I'm not sure where to take this. Because I think there does need, if you go back 2 years ago, what was new 2 years ago was, gee, we're acting on the needs assessment and we're executing against this and we make a recommendation for above and beyond. But they actually didn't get into the detail very much that we're commenting on here. But to me, it makes perfect sense that they would want to, particularly this go around. It's a little bit more numeric oriented counsel. And if I'm them, I'm like, what am I getting for my money?
Tom and Stan, do you know how much time the council has allocated to the presentation?
I haven't seen the agenda.
What have
I
they
don't
typically
think
done in
they're-
the past?
I don't know
it's
if
about
the
a half
agenda's
hour,
out yet.
45 minutes or so.
As a practical matter, I suspect that what they're gonna have read the letter and seen the and seen the exhibits, presumably. It's what they're gonna hear from you will be more significant, frankly, than the overall PowerPoint presentation.
You know what, Tom, maybe we plug success stories in and don't include them in the slide, but discuss them.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no need to have it on a slide.
Yeah. I think it'd be more impactful if they haven't seen it and they haven't read it ahead of time and it's just in presentation.
Okay.
Tom, you've asked for help. I'm looking at the spreadsheet and I think the biggest impact are the Youth Eastside Services behavioral health is 15,000. We're asking in the
60. They were asking for 60, right?
And the basic needs area, Sophia Way and Friends of Youth and Catholic Community Services. So if I don't have those proposals because I have the other groups. If somebody wants to send me those proposals, I'll read them this weekend and see if I can call out a description of the importance of those 3 grants, and those can be the ones that we're going to highlight because they're the biggest part of the extra ask. So Sophia Way, YES, Sophia Way, two grants to Sophia Way.
We don't want to fund YES.
We don't?
We do not.
Why not?
Is that correct, Nishina?
We do. It's under additional recommendation.
That's part of the 115 additional, Stan, not in the core ask. It's the additional ask.
Oh, no. It wasn't YES. It was
it wasn't.
Love.
It was,
One Love.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No,
okay. I apologize.
We
mistake.
had to cut YES considerably. Like they requested 60 and we are proposing 15 maybe.
Right.
And if we are really saying that youth mental health is a big priority for us, I mean, that's obviously not the right approach.
Yeah, but there was no way around it. We didn't have.
Yeah, but there's no way around it. That's true.
Right.
So that's the kind of thing we want to highlight. It's like we had to cut YES from 61,000 to 14,000. And so part of the additional ask is to put back another 15,000, which is still only funding them at half the amount.
Yeah.
What we're getting for that is XYZ. This is what they asked for. This is what the community needs. We know that's what they need. It's what we gave them last year. Like, I mean, stuff like that, if we can highlight. And so That's definitely one of the bigger ones, along with Sophia Way.
Yeah, and I
Do you want
I do-
the zip file of all the grants?
I just want those grants. I don't need all of them.
Okay, I can send you those 4. Sophia Way, both of them, the Friends of Youth drop-in, and how about Catholic Community Services?
Catholic Community Services and then the YES.
And then you have LifeWire, Jody, under, because we put another 12,000 additional, or under the
Yeah, and then I have like
foundation.
well. The other thing that I would highlight is what we're getting in the core. I mean, I really don't have time to do all this. I don't know when I'm going to find time to do this, but like we're saying we're going to fund Yes CrossPath at 85,000 because we know that's what they wanted to fund previously, and we know that's why they want to continue. But by funding them by 85,000 means we're cutting all these other really important ones. So that's also part of the story.
Yeah.
So.
Are there any points from Don Bowling's letter that we could pull out when they're talking about the help for men that are homeless? He's got some good points in there. I don't know if you can fit them in or not.
Sophia Way is going to be women, and
well, but in his letter, he
it's
talks
going to be
about
families.
Shelter services
that men need.
You know, what if we did this? So each of us remain kind of experts in our little subgroups. What if each subgroup went back through, because I agree it's important to bring forward the impact of the base recommendation and the additional. What if each subgroup was able to go back through their grants and summarize the impact in total of their grants? So you would have a summary from mental wellness, you'd have a summary from basic needs based on the grants. And then together we'd have a nice database of the total footprint impact in the community. And then from there, we could begin to cobble together the slides and the speaking points and that kind of thing. I think the point that was made, it's just not the additional recommendations, it's the total impact of these grants.
Yeah, also, like, are you talking about, Tom, in terms of summary, are you talking about outcomes, like number of people have impacted?
Yes, yes.
I have that already in an Excel if you'd like it.
For everybody? That would be excellent.
I've been using that all along.
And do you have it under, broken out by grantee and that kind of thing?
Yep. I think I even shared it with you at one point. But for example, in the Sophia Way, our frustration is that the projected number for the Helen's Place is 0 because they're brand new. They don't know.
Right.
The other one is a 0 for the, let's say, the Hope Lake one, if we were to include that. Wait a minute, let me get back to the real one. I'm looking at too many of them at the same time. The Sophia's Place one is a recommendation for $10,000, and yet actually they're projecting nobody. So that's not going to affect it. That's just the regional good stuff. That's where the issue is. The Friends of Youth drop-in services, that's 8 people projected in 2021. So this is not really going to be very helpful. Catholic Community Services, the projection is for Sammamish 1.
I think it would be more impactful, instead of numbers, you hit human interest stories. You hit, if we don't do this, it's going to affect mental health this way. If we don't do this, we're not being good neighbors and helping the homeless situation. If we don't do this, we're not going to be able to feed with the increase in the food banks.
Yeah.
I think that has more impact than just, oh, we're going to help 10 people or we're going to help 100 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
We have their total projection. I mean, I was just talking Sammamish's counts.
Yeah, I think
Or it could be a
I think-
combination of the two also. I mean, you could, what you're saying, Stan, but you could layer on by doing what Joyce is suggesting. I mean, then, so if we do have the numbers now, we don't need to put in a lot of time to figure out like how many people will not receive services. But if we do have some numbers like Joyce does, then including that, like in your summary, I think would be helpful.
Could Joyce, can you send that out to the group and we can just kind of comb through it?
Yeah, I need to put another column in for the total count of projection, not just the MEMISH's projection.
Okay.
I would appreciate that. We do have a time crunch on this, guys, because we have to
I'm not
have,
going to do it tonight.
we gotta have, no, but we have to have it to council by Tuesday. Is that correct, Mike?
It will probably go in the packet on Wednesday, but just to leave ourselves some time, yeah, we'd like to have it finalized on Tuesday.
Okay.
All right. Well, what I'm
So-
hearing is we just want human interest stories, and we want to make the impact a little harder hitting, so people can come away feeling like this is what you're getting for your money. Which I agree.
I agree.
Yeah.
Everybody got a consensus
So are you
on that
saying
one?
Yep.
every group is going to do their own description of what we're giving, what we're paying for? So it can be something like as simple as, with your investment, we are buying emergency shelter for youth, homeless youth and women, something like that.
Yeah.
Just like
Right.
simple.
Yes, and and if each subgroup could just send to all of us in like 2 days or something like that, or maybe by end of day Saturday, I don't know, how you would summarize the impact of your grants, and if you can break it out from base and incremental, and you don't have to overdo it, but a summary of some sort for each subgroup would really help a lot as we cobble this together.
Well, and I don't know if we need to break it out by individual grant impact.
No.
No, but what
I
we
think
do is
just by the subgroup.
Yeah, by just a summary of what's happening in the subgroup, and then we can take that and take the best of that and incorporate it both into these slides and also our speaking points.
Okay.
And can I
Once
just
we get all the
say,
inputs, Tom, go ahead.
and can I just say, like, we are here and I'm here as like staff support. So I'm really happy to like pull information together or help in whatever way that you need.
Cool.
In your whole, during your whole 30 hours a week?
I'm effective,
We do, and we want to make sure we're not incorrectly stating impact as well. But Rita, you can help a lot in terms of the practical reality of the impact you're seeing out there too.
Okay, can we get through the rest of the slides because we still have to do the letter and it's almost 20 after, right?
I think we're done on the slide.
We did the chart on the next page.
That was it.
There's the summary, and is the last one with a picture, is that a conclusion or something?
Yeah, it's a thank you slide.
Same as last year, isn't it?
Love it.
Should we switch over to
Great.
the letter?
Yes, please. Has everybody had a chance to look at the letter?
Yeah.
So the inspiration.
Are there any recommendations on changing it? We're open. There's no pride of authorship by anybody who had their finger in it.
And just to add, build on that, agree with that. The inspiration was we took what we presented last year and we went and we tried to customize it for this year. And then we also wrote a specific paragraph on COVID to bring that forward.
similar to the PowerPoint, I think that we might be able to, once we get these summaries and you call out, Tom, what are the more resonant summary
Yep.
information in those summaries, I think you could probably beef up the letter with that information as well.
Agree.
End it with your conclusion or your summary at the end is just numbers again.
Yeah, we kind of
Need to have
mined that a little bit.
a little more oomph to that.
So summary, under the summary, let's do an impact versus the graph.
Yeah, the impact. I mean, the graph is great. I just think you can add some narrative that says the impact of this is that we're going to be providing needed, mental health services to youth, to homeless space, shelter services for homeless youth and women and families. I don't know, whatever it is. And here's the dollar, what the cost of all that or something. I don't know. But I think we'll get that information in the summaries that you can pull out some of that.
And then we'll kind of back, almost reverse engineer into the letter. Any comments? I did add in the COVID thing because I feel like that's important. I liked how we talked about it earlier, which is we don't want to just rest on that because if someone wants to dismiss it, we don't want everything to come falling down. But that paragraph on COVID, how did that resonate or register with people?
I just don't want them to think that we're asking for additional funding just because of COVID.
Just because.
I like it. I think it's good.
Yeah.
I think there's been an increase of needs and even a larger increase in needs because of COVID. All right.
Terry, did I hear something?
Is there an exhibit? Is there an exhibit 1?
So exhibit 1 will be the funding, Excel funding table. So, but the recommendation or the request, the recommendation, and the additional ask. So it will all make sense when you see the agenda bill.
Oh,
Is this the spreadsheet we did?
It's the spreadsheet, correct?
Yeah.
Mike, on the spreadsheet that you're submitting, are you putting the one that has quote carryover and extra asks? I think that's confusing to them. They won't understand what that is.
No, we're gonna combine that just into the additional recommendation.
We're not using the term carryover.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you'll take out recommendation and just say requested recommendation and extra ask.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, because I got confused looking at it the first time until somebody explained it to me. Because I wasn't at the meeting. That's the reason why.
All right. Well,
we went through a lot. So, in summary, can we get everything back by God? We got to try to put it all together by Monday. If we can get it before then, it'll be magic. Do you think we can or not?
Yes.
Yes.
Let's address. Nashina, you okay with that?
It'd be excellent if we get it by end of day Saturday, if that's possible.
Yes.
And then Tom, you and I take a look at it Saturday.
Yeah, and then hopefully with Mike and Rita working out.
Well, we'll tweak it with them on Monday. We'll send it to them so they have it, and then we can
Monday's
work
Labor
with them
Day.
on Monday. Oh, is it?
Remember
right.
Monday's Labor Day.
Well, I got a labor on Labor Day, so
Yeah.
every day's the same to me, so I didn't know.
Yeah, I like that. So we can tweak it, refine it, send us what you can as soon as you can, and we'll crunch it together. I like the general tone. And then we'll reverse engineer it into the letter. And what I like is, go ahead.
I want to say, Mike and Rita, are you going to be available on Tuesday so we can work on it?
Yeah, I should be available.
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so Tom and I get the information back to you. before then, so you have it on hand and you can come up with some brainstorming ideas. All right, go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that was, what I like was we're challenging ourselves to make sure we're presenting the most compelling stuff, because this is not an easy ask. You know, if I had to handicap it, I wouldn't handicap it at 100%. So I really want to make, meaning getting the approval. So I really want to make sure we're addressing everything that could be a barrier. And I think we're trying to do that tonight, so I appreciate it.
So CJ, Terry, Joyce, can you glance over Mr. Bowling's letter and see if there's anything in there that's impactful that you may want to include as well?
Joyce,
It'll be in
Joyce,
the comments
do you have
tonight.
that? You have Bowling's letter?
You have it too.
I'll do that.
Yes, he sent it. He
It's
sent it to
it's
the
an
whole
email.
commission. So, right. So, is there anything else, guys? So,
The only
before I
thing,
go
Chair,
into, go ahead, sir.
is we have a regular Human Services Commission meeting scheduled for next week on the 9th. Open to any suggestions as to what the commission wants to do with that. It could be canceled, or we don't have anything scheduled, basically.
Can we?
What I
since
would
we've been putting
suggest,
so
I'm-
much.
I'm-
Go ahead, Terry.
I was just looking at the agenda or the schedule, and what I would suggest is to cancel next Wednesday, but then on the 14th of October, we've got a regular meeting. I don't know if we'll have, how much we'll have there, but maybe we could slot in the conclusion of the white fragility conversation on October 14th.
I agree.
Yeah.
So do I hear a motion for that? Because we have to put out, we got to put it
So
out
moved.
to,
What,
we got to put it out to the public.
can you
So I have a
repeat,
motion? I'm sorry, Nishina, or Jody.
repeat the motion?
We are
I would
canceling the
move.
meeting. We're canceling the meeting on the 9th.
Okay.
And the October meeting, and I don't have the date in front of me right offhand. Terry,
14th.
14.
the 14th of October will be the book discussion on the white fragility. So that's the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody, any opposed? Great. Is there anything else that we need to discuss before we enjoy our evening and start reviewing grants tonight?
So,
Again?
Mike, can you send information about the live stream on YouTube?
Yes, I will follow up with information about the live stream.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
And then also send notification to Tom and I on how we can get in to be able to do our presentation.
Yes.
All right. Anything else, guys?
Nope.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Great. Have a great evening. Thanks for being here. I'm glad I got my computer working and life is good.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
everyone.
Night all.
Take care. Have a good evening.
Good night, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.